So this is lesson 11 on our series on coursework, and in this lesson I'll briefly discuss how we test our software and how we write up those tests. Testing is part of what we call the iterative development process, where we go through several prototypes and then a final version, and in each of these versions we create and edit code, we test it, and if the code doesn't pass the tests, that's a signal that we need to do more coding. The testing process consists of 4 stages. We run the code, we enter some test input, we record the results using screenshots, and we analyze the results. So there are 3 types of test data, and you should make sure that your testing includes examples of all 3 types. Normal data replicates the sort of input that an ordinary user would provide in day-to-day use of the code. Boundary data is usually extremely large or extremely small, or in some other way at the limits of what your software can process. And finally, erroneous data, that's also sometimes called abnormal data or incorrect data. That is where you simulate making an error. So for example, entering a letter when the user is supposed to enter a number, or pressing enter without giving any input at all. And erroneous data will sometimes crash the computer. That's fine if it happens at test stage. So the first thing you do is make a test plan, and your plan should set out all your tests, and for each test you should provide the following information. You should give a general idea of what it is you're testing, like your password system or the scoring system. The type of testing, that would be normal, boundary and erroneous testing. The actual test data that you're going to input, or sometimes it will be clicking on a button or something like that, but exactly what you're going to do, I suppose. We call it test data. And the expected results, so what output you expect to result from that input. So here's an example. I haven't filled in the final 2 columns yet. Here's an example of a test plan. So in this example, the user is testing the login system, and in this software you've got to provide an age, and you have to be within an age range in order to log in. And so we will have normal data, which is just ages in or out of the age range. Some boundary data, which is right on the edge of the age range, and perhaps an extreme age like 106 or something, and a null age, which is a mistake, just leaving the age field blank. So we set them all out, and I think it's a good idea to number the tests. So I do recommend that you create a table like this. It's not the only way to record tests, but I think it's just the simplest way to do it. So you could even do it right now, pause the video and make a table like this in your project write-up document. I've talked a little bit about test data within the normal, extreme, boundary and erroneous levels. Expected results you've also got to provide. You've got to think about what you expect to happen before you do the test. Expected has a very particular meaning. It means what your client or your customers would expect your software to do. So don't write, oh, I expect my software to go wrong because it's only prototype 1. What it means is, under normal circumstances, if your software is working right, what would you expect to see? So I've completed the test plan with examples of input data and expected results. So I've got ages of 32 and 12, which are normal ages, and if it's 32, they should go onto the welcome screen. If it's 12, you should get an age warning and log out. If it's 18, that's the boundary. And if you enter an age of 18, you should go onto the welcome screen. And then I've given a boundary or extreme age of 1,000 just to see what my software does. I suppose it should be an error message because you'd never get a user who's 1,000. And if you press enter without putting an age, you should get an error message. So if you haven't done so already, make a brief test plan for your software and include normal, boundary and erroneous input and note the expected output in each case. I haven't said so on this slide, but you should be ultimately trying to test every part of prototype 1. So if your prototype 1's got a login and a quiz with 2 questions and a score at the end or something like that, then each part of that, the login, the quiz questions and the score, you should be testing. Your test should cover everything that's in your project. Okay, so hopefully you've made that test. And if you haven't, if you've just gone straight on it, that's fine. But just come back and do it later. But you should be aiming to get your test write-up done right now, really. So having planned the tests, you then carry them out. It's pretty easy to see what you have to do. So I'm on a particular test, let's say test 3A or something. I look at what my planned input data is, type it in or do the input activity, whatever it is that the test is. Something will happen. Take a screenshot of it, record the result in your test plan and compare what you actually got with the expected results. So basically, input, take a screenshot, record the result and compare with your expectations. So you can see here are my actual results. I've extended the test plan with an extra 2 columns and I've written what happened each time. And notice I haven't put the screenshots into my test plan because that would just look ridiculous. They'd either be so small that I can't read them, or they'll be so big that they'll distort the screen, the table. So I've got my screenshots elsewhere in my document, perhaps in a separate section, and I've labeled them all like screenshot 1A, screenshot 1B, and so on. And then I just refer to them in my table. Just quick describe of what happens and perhaps a screenshot. You can see as well that my welcome screen has come up in 3 different tests. I'm only going to show that once. There's no point in having repetitive and identical screenshots. So once I've shown the screenshot once and the age warning screen once, I don't need to keep showing them. And then I'm comparing my actual and expected results. So all I do is I read across the screen, I look at the expected result, I look at the actual result, and do they match? And in my analysis, I've put expected result. You could put okay or passed the test or no concerns or anything, just a tick, to be honest. It's worked. And then a couple of times I didn't get what I wanted. So if the person said they were 1,000 years old, it just logged them in a normal way. And if they pressed enter, instead of getting an error message, my program crashed. So I'm now gone on to my final stage, which is I'm making an error log, which is a list of all the changes I've got to make. So we'll look at that in a moment. So there's no reason why you shouldn't get to this stage now. And you could be writing this up and coming back to this video over several days, or perhaps read through this video, listen to it once, and then come back and do all the work. But however you do it, this is what you should be aiming at. So we've analysed the code. There's 3 possibilities really. The code could be working fine, in which case nothing more to do. Things that have gone wrong, which is the example I've just shown you, so you've got to make corrections. Or there could be situations where things could be better, but they're not urgent corrections. So there are possible improvements, like a password. I could make it case sensitive or not case sensitive, just things like that. They're not vital, but they're nice to have. So finally, where you do think you need to make a change, because there's an error or something, you create an error log. And this is the very last thing in prototype 1. And it's a list of all the errors that your code testing has revealed. I like to number them. And then when I get onto prototype 2, I can say, oh, I'm now addressing error log 3 or whatever. So in your error log, you should say what error happened and what you have to do to fix it. So this is the last slide in this presentation. Just to sum up, you've got to make a plan, a test plan, carry out all the tests and record the results, have a few screenshots. You don't have to have lots of repetitive screenshots, but just the main things that happen, you should have shots of them. And then finally analyze results and start to build up an error log, because that will form the foundation of what you do when you move on to prototype 2. Now, obviously get in touch with me if there are any questions arising from this, but hopefully that's pretty straightforward. And basically, if your code does anything yet, you can start testing it. So don't worry, it doesn't have to be in a very developed state, but as long as your code does something, you can do these steps 1, 2, 3. So I look forward to seeing those tests all recorded when I see you next. So cheerio, and I'll see you soon. Bye.